for that type of breakthrough, whether that be emotional well-being or your spiritual path or love relationships or your creativity, just really anyone looking to have lasting soul embodied thriving in some area of their life, then this video is going to be for you. Over the next hour or so here, I'm going to be going over 3 master key codes that I have found to be essential when it comes to shifting these types of challenges and blocks and problems, shifting the energy to being in alignment with universe, God, source, spirit, really just the living, intelligent, organizational force of creation itself. These codes can assist in literally evolving your entire life from the inside out into that highest alignment. Not only am I going to explain some of these frameworks today, but also if this information vibes with you, if you are digging it, I would love it if you would send me a message with the word activation, and I would love to gift you a 15 to 20 minute guided activation meditation, tuning you into some of how this actually works to kind of bring you through this process directly a little bit. For those of you that aren't aware, my name is Michael Interstellar. I'm the founder of the Interstellar Project and a doctor of bioenergetic medicine. I have been working with many clients now for many years, learning a lot of these different types of modalities from different teachers and masters of different lineages. And also similarly, I had a lot of these things that weren't really working until I had a near-death car accident. And on the other side of that near-death car accident, I came out and really had a profound spiritual experience where a lot of my psychic intuitive gifts that I had disconnected from in childhood were reawakened. And then this sort of energy medicine that I am working now with so many people one-on-one started to be born through me. And I started to incorporate it into my one-on-one work with clients, which I've been doing for many years now. So I'm going to share my screen here so I can bring up some graphics to help illustrate some of these things. If you have been following me on social media lately, you may be already familiar with this graphic because I've been using it quite a bit, and deep gratitude and thanks to Veta Austin _water here for first sharing this illustration about this experiment that she did, because I've been utilizing it a lot. I'm deeply grateful. And so that being said, we'll get into why I have this graphic here in just a moment. But the inner family unit, okay? So the 3 main components and master key codes are the inner mother, the inner father, and the inner child, right? And so for starters, I honor the mother first because the mother in this case is essentially the substance that nourishes all of creation, right? It is literally the substance that all of creation is created out of and built out of, right? Is literally, some people, you might call it matter, right? But it goes a lot deeper actually than what people call matter, right? Because there's a lot of dimensions, a lot of layers other than just matter, right? There's many dimensions and layers of energy and components of the spectrum of what people refer to as matter, right? But before we get too deep into that, let's illustrate what I mean here in terms of the inner mother. So the inner mother comprises of your experiences and relationship with your mother or motherly figures, your body, your mother's body, how you were nourished, what you were given. Can you kind of see where I'm going here, right? When I talk about that the mother as a whole is the substance that nourishes all of creation, okay? Now, what we're doing here is we're actually attuning you to these 3 master key codes as I am sharing with you how some of this works, right? So your inner mother is comprised of your relationship or lack of relationship sometimes with your mother, right? With your body, right? That substance, literally, the body is a substance, right? That you are nourished, your mother's body, because sometimes your mother's body, if you were breastfed, nourishes you, but it goes deeper than that because this isn't just about nourishment as in food, right? This is an energetic nourishment, emotional nourishment from your mother or motherly figures. What you were given, what you received, right? And how the energetic dynamics that came behind what you were given and how you were given it, right? All of those different things. The way that maybe you were given finances as you were growing up or weren't, or the relationship that you had to food, or the way that the person gave you food, right? If they're, let's say, sometimes mother was extremely busy and had a lot going on, and she's always exhausted when she's feeding you, right? You can see how these things go very, very deep, right? So that's the gist of the inner mother principle. Okay, it's your experiences, comprised of those experiences and relationships based on motherly figures, nourishment, and substance, and what you were given. Your father, your inner father, is comprised of the experiences and relationship with your father, fatherly figures, structures, patterns, routines, systems, right? And all of these different other structures, your relationship to structures, systems, patterns, discipline, your father and fatherly figures, all of those end up comprising a larger pattern or a larger structure of your identity, right? Whoever you are right now, your identity, that has a certain sort of structure, both in your subconscious, in your psyche, in your DNA, in your cells, in your energy body and auric field. All of those different sorts of things essentially comprise different, there's so many layers of what we call our identity, right? And those all are an evolving structure that's evolved out of many different imprints connected to structures and patterns and those different sorts of things that have evolved throughout our experience in time, right? But we also can see that even our body has structures, right? We have the organ systems, the gland systems, right? The structure of the DNA. Okay, so all these different things have patterns and structures. Okay, like I said, you're literally getting an attunement here to how this all works. So finally, we have the inner child. And the inner child are the imprints of how you were received, how your love was received, your light was received, your magic, your autonomy, your play, your joy, all those different experiences as you kind of went into the world and acted into the world. All of those different things were received in different ways, and those different experiences and the relationship of those moments and experiences also played a part in creating these unique identities, which are really the union, right? It's where father and mother came together as the union of the nourishment, the nourishing substance, and the structure, and all of that moving through you, right? And this is something that's literally still happening right now. Your energy, right, is being received by me, by the reality, all in a certain way. And that is the inner child that is constantly moving and evolving, right? Because throughout time, throughout all of those experiences, are all collecting into this unique identity, right? And that unique identity is constantly evolving and shifting and changing. And that unique identity, comprised of all those previous experiences, are all parts of the inner child. Okay. But you can see here why I call it the inner child, even though some of those experiences, like right now, are still being created, because it is the byproduct and union of father and mother. Okay. And this is why uh, I use this, this pine cone. Actually, before we get into the pine cone, this is why I had this illustration brought up here, because this actually makes it a lot easier. So in creation, right, in your life, in reality right now, so you have the seed. Okay, you guys can see the seed here, the seed in this picture here. Now, this goes all the way back to when you were conceived, right? The father, right? Your father, in one way or another, unless you are a test tube baby or something like that. And even then, there was a seed of your creation. Okay. And then that seed, as you can see here, when this seed was placed in water, right? The ultimate, like, basically substance, underlying substance of creation is water, the life-giving substance. As that seed was placed in the water and then frozen in a particular way, you can see there was that imprint of this sunflower, which that seed was to become. Okay. So as you can see here, that seed, which came from the father principle, right, already had the pattern or structure inherent in it. Okay. And yet, because that was there, right, that doesn't necessarily mean that the sunflower is going to grow into that exact imprint, right? And that unique imprint right there is the inner child. Okay. Well, actually, to get a little bit more evolved here, that pattern that you were seeing there, that unique pattern, is what we would call an aspect of the divine child. Okay. So the inner child would actually be the unique sunflower that it ended up as. And I'm going to explain that in just a moment, right? Because so what happens here is that seed, right? That seed calls things to it, right? Because that seed, which is a substance, right? It's already a substance made out of substance or matter of the mother, right? And now in human creation, it's a little bit easier to understand this, right? Because you have the seed, you have like the sperm, and then you have the egg. So that sperm contains the pattern, right? And then it goes into the egg, which nourishes the sperm by creating the body, right? And now you can see how these are the fundamental building blocks of creation itself. But I'm utilizing this to show you how these keys apply to everything. We're going to get into how this evolves into the breakthroughs that you are looking to have emotionally in work and career, why those other healing modalities and therapy just haven't been working. We're going to be making all of this really clear. I just want to attune you to these so that you can start to utilize these in understanding your life and what's going on and what's happening to you. So we have that seed, right? And so we have that imprint. You can see there that pattern that essentially was calling to it the experiences, right, that wanted to grow up into that sunflower, right? So it's calling to it different nutrients, right? Different nutrients from the ground, right? So it's first calling in things so it can start to expand those little roots out, and those roots reach out and they look for more water. They look for specific minerals, bacterias, all different sorts of things, right? And depending on how that seed is nourished, right, will dictate a lot of how and what it grows into, right, and how it grows into it, right? So what of that kind of like original intended perfected pattern that we have there can actually come about, right? So depending on how that seed was received, right, what kind of structure it was given as well, right? Because that seed, let's say if it's on a farm, right, and there are farmers and different routines of nourishment, there's other plants and different things like that in the environment. There's bugs, there's all those different things are different structures, right? You could look at a factory farm as being one type of structure and form, and you could look at an organic, just natural living garden as another type of form or structure, right? So all these different things play a part in creating in what the final, well, not even the final, right? Because there's all these different micro moments of opportunity along the way and the growth, right? And there's even to the point where that flower ends up seeding itself and continuing to reproduce. So, how does this relate to you in your life and what's going on? Well, you as well were conceived, you grew in your mother's womb. There were all different sorts of experiences that happened in your mother's while you were in your mother's womb. And then there were the experiences when there was the actual birth experience when you were born, how you were received there. Was it in a hospital? Was it in the water, in the ocean, surrounded by dolphins? Some people have really incredible, beautiful birth experiences. And then how you were received in the hospital. Were you cut from your mother's umbilical cord really quickly? What was her energetic state while she was being born, right? And then from there, how long were you in the hospital? How long were you held for? Were you poked and prodded with needles and different things? Did you have to be put in an incubator? So all those different imprints going all the way back to even your conception are imprints that are made on your cells, on your DNA, on your nervous system, on your energetic field. And all of that is constantly going on. And then, so as you were a baby, right, there's that nourishment that you got from your mother. It could have been breastfeeding, it could have been formula, right? There's her emotional state as she's feeding you. And then there's relationship to his father. Was he there? Was he not? What type of structure and boundaries did he hold for you? What were the rules and guidelines in the house, right? And then other fatherly figures like uncles, or perhaps your teachers, the structures and rules in school. All these different things are always forming imprints of you, right? Constantly. And those imprints are stored in your nervous system, your DNA, right? Because literally, the way that this works is that we have light, electromagnetic energy moving through our body, right? Our consciousness, our light, our awareness is projecting out like an old school movie projector, right? And I recently did a talk on rewriting your film projector. Oh. I recently did a talk on rewriting your movie script, right? And I'm going to use this picture here, and we're going to switch screen sharing to this other screen. So literally, everything you experience in your life and have experienced works very much like this film projector here, right? That film strip, right? So you have a light in this film projector and it projects out through the film, which are the old school film had these little, they're just single pictures, right, on a reel. And then the light moves through it, it projects it and projects it up onto the screen, right? This is how your life works. All these experiences that you've had, whether you consciously remember them or not, are all imprinted in your DNA, in your nervous system, in your body, right? So now I want you to imagine for a moment, so we can illustrate some of these principles, right? If you are, let's say, because I don't know if you've ever heard of projection, right? Not this type of projection, but the reason they call it projection is because we can project onto others, right? And how does that happen? It happens based on these principles that I'm describing to you, because we have these imprints that get created. Let's say we are 7 years old and we are in school, right? And we have a school project, and it's some sort of school creative art project, and we create this beautiful piece of art, and then we go to school and we are given a terrible grade by the teacher, right? There, and the teacher comes over is like, let me just tell you why this is not good art, right? Maybe that was the first piece of art that you ever created. So that structure, right? So you have you, which is that child with that magic, the creativity, that play. You're so inspired to create that, right? And then you received an imprint. So how were you received, your inner child? How was it received by that structure, right? It was given a terrible grade. It was told that it wasn't good, right? So that imprint gets recorded in your nervous system, in your DNA, in your cells. And if it's a very intense experience, those types of things can be very traumatic, right? Where that aspect of you and your light, your identity, your inner child was received. It wasn't given, quality nourishment in that case. Because let's just say that structure really wasn't very compassionate, right? It wasn't, it was kind of done in a way where you were shamed, let's say, for creating that terrible piece of art. Then what will happen is there'll be that imprint of shame around creation and around art. And that imprint, like that little film strip, will get stored in the nervous system, in the DNA, and it will stay there, and it will become part of the overall evolving identity, that structure that gets created there, right? And so what happens there is, to go back to this other thing, then what we have is, let's say that that sunflower that it was looking to grow into that imprint, it's like you kind of put like like a gnarly black dot in that pattern right there in the center one, and then that sunflower maybe grows and it kind of looks deformed or something like that, right? And of course, this can happen on a physical level, but this can also happen on an energetic level. So now that same 7-year-old is 30 years old, 40 years old, and they are going to give a presentation at work in front of their colleagues. And they are projecting that teacher from when they were 7, they're projecting that teacher onto their boss, right? And because of the dynamics of energy and how it moves, and they've created this identity and attracted all of these similar experiences, then that boss is like, no, no, that's a terrible idea. That's not going to work here. Go back to the drawing board, buddy. And why does it work like that? Because all of our body, all of creation is electromagnetic, right? And so the life force, the energy, is just moving through our body, and it's going to attract experiences based on those imprints, right? So we talked about how that works. The seed is calling to it. It has an inherent calling to it of what it needs, right? Like it calls to it magnesium, zinc, phosphorus, water, whatever it is, right? Seeds attract what they need to it, right? Like when the seed only takes out of the ground based on the imprints, right? It's not necessarily going to, there is specific things that it needs, but if it gets poisons, right? If there's poisons in the ground, sometimes it'll literally just die, right? because it wasn't calling those to it, right? But we are even more evolved, right? We are creator beings. We're extremely powerful electromagnetic centers of energy. And so what happens is we start to call to us those same projections. Why? Because the force of life, right, which we call this the divine child. Okay, so what is the divine child? We talked about the inner child. So the inner child is your unique imprints that you have of those experiences that comprise your identity and all those imprints from before. That is the inner child. So the divine child is that which animates all of the identities for all people, right? Because you have the substance, right? The substance of creation, the mother, right? And then you have the structure of creation, the father. And when they come together, right, there is the divine child. The divine child is that on a entire creational level. It is that which has always been animating everything and continues to move through this no matter what. It animates this as father and mother, and the pattern and the substance come together, and it will put off more seeds, right? Because that's how creation happens. Creation is meant to continue to grow and evolve eternally, right? And that's why creation can happen. So the divine child, right, is that eternal imprint. And I bring up the divine child because now we're going to get into how this can start to make some shifts and breakthroughs for you in your life. Because all of these imprints are stored in the nervous system, right? In the DNA, in the psyche, in the subconscious, in the cells of the body, right? But those are just imprints, right? And there is actually a way to go in and shift and realign those imprints back to that pattern, right? Back to that original divine organic blueprint, the pattern that that sunflower originally wanted to become, right? But it's not just what it was meant to become from before, because all those experiences you had are still important, right? Right? They played a part in making you who you are today. But the imprints can shift and change. Those identities, structures don't need to be based on that trauma because life continues to evolve. And you can access what I call the divine mother, the divine father, the divine child, which are these perfected imprints of realigning your identity to the highest and best of what it can be, realigning those imprints, going back within you to retrieve those imprints of that inner child, right? And how, what its type of relationship was with nourishment, with love, with money, with things like that. So I'm going to give you an example here of a client that I had, a really powerful client experience that I'm very proud of this example. So there was this woman, and she was just coming out of an experience that was very close to death, actually. She had issues where her hair was falling out. She had skin issues. She had major anxiety. She had a strong detachment from even being in her body. She wasn't really clearly aware of what she wanted to do, her purpose. Her own immune system was essentially attacking her on multiple levels. She just felt extremely disconnected and really was just really going through it when I met her. And she was in the hospital for a number of these different things. As I said, she was close to death at one point. And while this was an extremely complex case, but a lot of it started with because her family, as she was growing up, was essentially using her as an emotional dumping ground, right? So she basically had a family of a bunch of people who weren't processing their own emotions. They weren't connected to their body. Her fatherly figure held a lot of shame. and kind of dumped it on her motherly figure. Um, one of her motherly figures had a lot of jealousy, so she wasn't even really even able to fully experience joy. She experienced a lot of her joy as anxiety, because when she was growing up, one of her main motherly caretaker figures was jealous of her joy, right, when she was holding her as a baby. And because that caretaker, who was in that position of mm, who that baby, her as a baby, was relying on that caretaker for her life, right? Because she would have died without that caretaker. So when a baby experiences something like joy and then its caretaker experiences jealousy, they will actually like try to not experience joy. So in her case, it was anxiety. She was like displacing her own joy for this caretaker, and it was experienced as a strong anxiety in her body. Um, so this went all the way back to, there's so many complex layers. It went all the way back even to her birth, right? Where her mother, due to the epidural, was not even conscious and in her body. Her mother was disconnected from her body. So her mother wasn't there to fully embrace her and witness her while she was born, right? So this was one of the very first imprints that created a disconnection from the body and feeling like she was also taken out of her mother's womb with forceps, right? So these metal structures. So she's being received once again by this like structure that's very like harsh imprint to a little baby and a little child. And so now I'm happy to say, after a few months of us working together and me creating a customized program for her, not only is her hair not falling out and she has skin problems and her body's not attacking her anymore, but well beyond that, she's actually thriving in most areas of her life. She has lots of energy. She's getting out there. She's doing a lot. And even beyond this, she is stepping into a deeply fulfilling soul embodied purpose and thriving as she is starting to incorporate a lot of the different tools and techniques, really pulling out of her own inner ability to heal herself on many levels. So yeah, this is a great case that I love to share about, and I work with a lot of different people in similar cases to this, from much lighter things to even more dense and heavy and darker things on all different sorts of levels. So now I want to share with you a little bit about my offer here, because I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this works if you are interested in incorporating some of this into your life. So yes, I call this psychic intuitive medicine, as I told you. So essentially, uh, the main way that I work with people is I create a 90-day program. Sometimes it can be a 6-month program. It really depends on what works for the person, because this is all very organic. But essentially, if you are interested, we sit down and I would deeply attune using my psychic intuitive gifts, so deeply attuned to what you have going on energetically in your life, in your process. And we would co-create a 90-day program that would be customized, personalized just for you, where it starts with clearing and neutralization, right? So step one is clearing and neutralization. This is where we go into different trauma programming, conditioning. We actually create an energetic ceremonial space, guiding you into a light to medium trance. And as you are sharing some of what's challenges you're dealing with, your stuckness, whatever problems you haven't been able to work through, whatever you're trying to call more of into your life, you want more loving relationships and things like that. And as you share about those things, I'm shown the root of the pattern, right? We talked about the imprints of that pattern. This could be childhood, societal, past life, ancestral, generational. The sky's the limit, right? And through my psychic intuitive gifts, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, I'm shown the root of those different imprints. And then we guide those aspects of you, maybe that 7-year-old that was in that class, back into unconditional love and wholeness. So next is I call it harmonizing and attuning. This is where we're repatterning the nervous system, putting new imprints in the DNA, the cells, connecting you to the source of creation, your bioenergetic fields. And this is all stuff that's original to you. It's already within you, like that imprint for the seed. This isn't something I'm creating. We're reconnecting it to that original blueprint that you have. Then we have repattern and rebirth. This is where we are reconnecting you to those new identity imprints, right? And really that highest and best life that you are looking to have. Then we have integration and alignment, because as you make these major shifts and changes, then you are going to want to have this whole integration. Integration is really where a lot of the understanding comes into play as you are shifting your identity, no longer, right, making some of those projections of that, like that person, that 7-year-old and his teacher onto his boss. As you are now working with those new imprints and you are integrating this new identity and looking at life in a new way, we give you a lot of tools, energetic frameworks, a new operating system to operate as a whole new you. And then finally, we have embody and co-creation. And this is where you're literally embodying in your everyday practical reality this new you. And this is very, very key point, because this isn't just about me working on with you and assisting you one-on-one. I'm actually giving people that are in the soul embodiment process the support, the tools, so that you can assist in being your own inner healer. So we're activating and pulling out of you that inner healer that is already there, right? Because this isn't about kind of keeping you stuck in needing me or some sort of teacher or guru or whatever. Although this is much more like, Michelangelo, the famous artist, said that he saw an angel within the rock and he set it free. He said it was the job of the sculptor to find the sculpture within the rock. And this is a lot of what my process is about, is pulling that inner healer out of you because of my ability to attune to and see it, and then giving you those tools based on your uniqueness and who you are and where you're at, all of those things. So if you would like to hear about working deeper, I would love if you would send me a message. I'd also love to gift you this 15 to 20 minute guided activation ceremony if you want to message me activation. And so, yeah, thank you so much. I hope these key codes have been helpful for you, and I'm really excited to talk to you soon about how we can develop you this custom soul embodiment pathway and